Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. Heated Rivalry, baby. We are here. I have just absolutely been in a chokehold for the past week since I've binged this show. Does it feel the same for you? I know I'm not alone in this.
Yes, it is encompassing. I've been watching week by week, so I feel that I've had a very different experience than the people who got to just like mainline 6 hours of softcore pornography into their brains.
Deep dive into sexy kind of back arches and going to the cottage.
Yes, the cottage.
The cottage. Okay, I'm so excited that we're here to talk about Heated Rivalry. It is one of the more hot things that I have seen lately, and the internet is ablaze in agreement. I think the memes have run rampant. I feel very strongly that this is not just for gay men. It's for straight women and queer women and other non-binary folk, and just people of all genders have kind of all come together metaphorically and literally in a kind of salute of this beautiful love story that is Heated Rivalry. And I'm so glad to talk to you. It's so funny because we just chatted 2 weeks ago. And this is like a Sex Ed with DB first, where we haven't had on somebody who we've just spoke to, but I needed you and your expertise to talk specifically about a scene we'll talk about in a little bit, the sexy consensual non-consent scene where Shane is on the phone talking to his pal with a billion kids, and he's getting a BJ from Ilya, and it's incredibly hot, and we're gonna dive deep. But I'm so excited to howl at this show with you today.
Ow! I'm here to howl. This show has been such a phenomenon, and I think that such a big part of it is, when you reached out to me, you said, let's talk about the power dynamics in the show. And I think that power dynamics are such a big part of what is so sexy about this, and why I think viewers feel safe enough with the content to become so ferally horny. And, this is what I do. It's the bread and butter. The establishing safety in order to be chaotically horny.
We got to make hats. That's really good. That's so good. So we're gonna get into all of it, right? We're gonna talk about what makes this show so hot and emotionally compelling, kind of beyond just the sex. We're going to talk about the chemistry. I would love to talk about the amazing Russian accent. I was fooled. I was absolutely flabbergasted to learn that Connor Story, is that how you pronounce his name? Is a Texan, actually.
Gaslighting us. Yeah.
Just completely lying, aka being a good actor. And I'd love to talk about consent and just how it shows up in this show, and why, this show is so sexy, so safe, so fun, and why people are literally posting memes about them being in insane asylums, essentially because they can't stop watching it. They can't stop consuming the content. I just love it. Okay. Tell me your thoughts about the chemistry, about like the tenderness, the combination of like what makes this show so hot.
Yeah. What's the juice? What's the crack they put in it?
Yes.
So as somebody I have sort of a grounding in fan fiction. I know that this comes from the fan fiction world. It's like Captain America fan fiction that kind of had the serial numbers filed off, as they say, and then turned into this hockey romance. So written by a woman, the book, the source material, but adapted for TV by a gay man. So that's a really important combination when we're talking about this genre of boy love is one of the names, and yaoi or yaoi is the other name. They come from Asian tradition. So yaoi is a Japanese term that comes from manga, and it represents the genre of men kissing and having sex for female pleasure. Yes, boys me for the female gaze a lot of times. So the fan fiction world, there's a lot of gay male fan fiction written for consumption of female viewers. And so this represents a book that's very much in that tradition, but the adaptation by an actual gay man who's brought it to screen is, I think, what gives it this crossover appeal. It's not like, Red, White, and Royal Blue as another kind of analog, but even that, it sort of remained in this sort of female-friendly zone that didn't, in the most academic terms, it didn't fuck in the same way that this show does, because this show has that that gaze and that perspective of actual adult men having sex, not limited exclusively by the way that women might perceive that within our world of what might be comfortable for us. So that's again, the crossover is like ballooning off of the fact that there's sort of an intersection of perception going on.
Wow, we're getting academic right off the bat. I mean, I think this is a great point and good call out to manga, right? Because these genres have existed and have been very popular for such a long time in Japanese culture and, like you said, other Asian cultures. Mm-hmm. And when I think of comps, right, like, of course, people are talking about Brokeback Mountain, people are talking about Call Me by Your Name. And I think that in general, this show, I mean, part of the reason why it feels a little different is because there is so much more yearning. I mean, Brokeback Mountain, there is a lot of yearning, but I think
it's sad.
It's sad. It's kind of all around this idea that there has to be something bad or terrible that happens in the end. Call Me by Your Name, spoiler alert, ends with Timothée Chalamet crying in front of a fireplace with a fly kind of flying around him, kind of to, just indicate that like he's not able to get the love story. And I saw a tweet about Heated Rivalry that's like, for people who are surprised that they get their happy ending at the end, welcome to romance, baby. Like, this is the bread and butter of romance. And so I just like the idea of people getting to dream, and they're not. The main tension in the show is that Shane essentially doesn't feel comfortable coming out. And of course, like, I read this thing that's like, there are 0 still NHL, your professional hockey players who are currently out. So this is a real tension that we're still dealing with in now 2026. Happy New Year. And I think that, of course, that is a real thing, and that's a real tension. It's the same kind of thing where Ilya cannot come out because he is Russian. Supposedly, he's not in real life, of course, but in the show, he is Russian. And so Russia is not a gay-friendly place. And so, again, like, these very real-world tension issues are coming up. But I think in general, we're allowed to dream as the audience. And that's what makes this so much more, this connective tissue, so much more emotionally compelling.
Yeah, and it's reminding me of something that my favorite drag queen, Trixie Mattel, likes to say, which is that being gay is not hard. Straight people make being gay hard. So, this shows, it's very clear in this series how the external pressures on their, inability to come out or inability to be open, that is what sucks. The fact that Ilya would get arrested if he went back to Russia for being gay is what is hard, not what happens in the world that they create with each other, because that is fun. Being gay is great. Yes. It's when the straight people get involved and make it hard that is difficult. Whereas in Brokeback Mountain, Call Me by Your Name, that it feels, sometimes, and especially, Call Me by Your Name, made by Luca Guadagnino, a gay man, there's still like it also feels very Giovanni's Room in a certain way, by James Baldwin, where the story of being gay is so interwoven with internalized homophobia and stress, and the yearning comes with shame, and the feeling I feel in Heated Rivalry that's so special and unique is that they are able to separate out those two things. It's like they can yearn for each other, and then the wider world is the way that it is, and we kind of get to have this nice, like, we know that when we're in the hotel room with them, it's just fun, and that's like we can let go, which is nice.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about the emotional safety piece here that they have kind of provided. And again, like, I do think in part because this is written by a woman, right? Like, I think women are socialized to think about what that feels like to viewers more when they're writing it and when it's being adapted to screen. I feel like that comes through. And yeah, I just feel like in general, there's so much tenderness and softness. And even though the story starts where, Ilya and Shane very much are just hooking up in the beginning. Ilya makes it very clear to him that this is not anything real. But as the years pass and as we see their relationship blossom, it grows into love. And so I think that we see the soft touches on the face. We see the compliments. We see the scene where, Shane is asking Ilya to talk to him in Russian for 20 minutes and he just tells him he loves him, but he can't understand him, right? There's so many beautifully well-crafted pieces to this show in that way. What do you think that, like, when it comes to vulnerability and the yearning and like the way in which they connect, what did this show get so right that other shows that try to aim for this kind of miss out on?
Yeah, I think it comes back again to the way that fan fiction and romance fiction are crafted using gay male stories for the female gaze, because they make intimacy have less danger in it, I think, in a lot of ways, because, there's this sort of fantasy of an egalitarian playing field between the two people in the relationship without the baggage of gender. So when we see the two of them, making these gestures towards feelings and emotions, there's not like, well, this one's the girl, so that means, well, of course the girl's going to have feelings and all of those things. So, whereas of course Shane is kind of portrayed as the one with more feelings and he's the bottom, which we could do a whole separate episode about,
which we will, that. Which I'm sure we will.
As an emotional bottom myself, I completely relate. But then the way that Shane, as that, more emotional person in the dynamic, makes space for Ilya to become more and more vulnerable is, I think, like a fantasy element of any relationship where we want our vulnerability and our longing and our desire to make it safe for the other person to come toward us. And there's a lot about like, maybe Russian stoicism and the way that machismo plays out in that culture. And he can't really feel what he feels. But then like when we see him start to let down his guard, it means that much more. And I think like this book has just done, or this series has just done something so beautiful with showing how there can be so much pressure on a relationship and that those factors can be anything outside of, heteronormative gender and stuff. It can be oppressive governments or the NHL or, what have you, but that the risk of loving somebody can transcend all of that. And that's really what we want to see in something. And then they fuck, which is also great.
Come, both of them.
Yeah.
And we haven't even touched Scott and Kip's story, right? And I think just a collective sigh.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about parental love, which I think they do. It's very Canadian in this way. It's like 10% Degrassi, where you're like, it's a little cheesy, but I love it. And that's, I think what's missing in these other shows is kind of showing what love is supposed to look like, what a healthy love is supposed to look like, even when you're in conflict with yourself or with an institution or society, right? Like when we're talking about Scott and Kip is this person who knows who he is. He has this amazing father who loves him, is able to like really care for him and know him and hold him in his vulnerabilities and when he's sad. And Kip doesn't want to be hidden, right? But he understands that for Scott, it's really challenging because he doesn't feel like he can be the center of attention and coming out, right? But we see this like unbelievable scene on the ice, right? The biggest romantic gesture that there ever was, where, TBD on how much Kip was waiting for him to do this. Was it many years? I kind of lost the timeline.
Yeah.
But the point is that we're being taught, and, teens, maybe there's like a 19-year-old who's watching this show, is being taught like, you don't deserve to be hidden. You deserve to be out in the open, and your love shouldn't be shameful. Yeah. And I think that's another, we're getting all of these messages through these actions that these characters are doing and the way in which that it's being presented to us. And that scene then unlocks, of course, Ilya saying, "I'm coming to the cottage," right?
Yes. Oh, that was so good. The both of them watching that, like every time I see a gif of them looking,
I know. It gives me chills. It really does. I think it's
really beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I thought they were so compassionate about Scott's reasons to not come out, because I think that those stories can be really oversimplified sometimes, because we expect people to come out and we demand people to come out. And then sometimes there's really complicated reasons behind that. But then also as a partner who's out, going back into the closet for someone that you're in love with is incredibly painful. So that was really, really well portrayed and such a great payoff and a big payoff for our boys and how representation leads the way.
Yes. I mean, it is this beautiful thing of like Scott is this older player, right? This older hockey player who's able to show these younger players like, hey, don't be afraid. Like you can be yourself. Okay, I want to transition now to just consent in general, because I personally think that, of course, like seeing two hot men lift each other up and push each other around and be soft and make out and pretend to do anal and pretend to give each other blowjobs and pretend to give each other hand jobs is hot.
Just because they're pretending to be Russian means they're pretending to have anal sex. How dare you? That's real.
So all of that is very arousing, of course, right? Like I think we all can look at these scenes and see the way that they touch each other and their chemistry and their eye contact and their mouths and the way that they are as two characters falling in love who have a lot of lust for each other. That is palpable, right?
Yeah.
In addition to that, my feeling of why this is so sexy and why this has such staying power and is living, as the youth say, rent-free in my brain, is because of the consent pieces, because of the consistent check-ins. Is this okay? Ilya saying vodka is your reward for after, right? Like I want to be sober when I fuck you, right? Like there are so many pieces to this where they are very gentle and caring with each other, even though, especially because they are men and they are powerful and physically strong, they're athletes, they use their strength in a way that allows the other person to give their consent before they actually wield it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's beautiful. And I'm curious to get your take generally on consent in this show and how it showed up for you and what it means to you.
Yeah, I really like how I think this is, again, another factor of a gay man being the showrunner is that there is something from the world of queer sex that doesn't always happen in straight sex, but it's something that I'm always talking about as a kink educator, which is asking someone what they want. Because, you know, again, in like heteronormative scripts of sexuality, it's like, well, first we touch a boob, then we finger, then we penetrate. And like there's just this unspoken script, which I'm sure you're breaking down on your show all the time as well. But when queer people have sex, we don't know. It's like we have to find out who tops, who bottoms, who prefers what, who maybe doesn't even want to penetrate at all of this stuff. Like you have to talk about it. So there's more dialogue as a natural feature of the way that we connect as queer people. So that stayed true in the show. And that has been really lovely to watch, of just the simplicity of what do you want? Like the first time that they hook up with each other, you know, they talk about it because they have to. And if we normalized just a little bit of talking in the rest of the sex world, we would all be having a lot hotter sex because we worry, oh, it's going to ruin it if we talk about it. But as you can see from our wonderful role models, the boys, it's quite great if you talk about things.
It's not only great, it's sexy, it's hot. Yes. It's like, you know, it's just like, it's, of course, consent is the bare minimum, but we saw firsthand in the show so many instances of how it really adds to the experience. It adds to the dirty talk. It adds to just all of these pieces that make their sexual chemistry hit so hard. Yes. Let's talk about the consensual non-consent moment. Can you lay out kind of what this scene is and why you think that this scene is so sexy and what works in it?
Yes. So I've just released an article about this on my Substack where I broke down why it's consensual non-consent, because it's actually not something that I personally clocked the first time I watched it. I was like, ooh, that was hot. But my friend texted me and was like, Lina, are you going to talk about the CNC? And I'm like, what? And then I had to go back and remember, because it's very subtle. So what happens is in the finale, they're at the cottage and Shane gets a phone call from his friend about his new baby, and he wants to be supportive and he wants to get on the phone with his friend, but they're having a sexy sex weekend and Ilya is messing with him and he's sort of touching him and won't stop touching him. And so Shane puts his friend on mute on the call and he goes, stop it. Like he's very serious. He's like, please stop that. And Ilya's like, I don't think you want me to stop. And let's be very clear, erections are not consent. But in this situation, they set up a scenario where Ilya says, well, if you get hard, then I'm going to keep going. And Shane goes, well, I won't. And then gets back on the phone. So they've set up a consensual non-consent situation where, Shane has said no, but there's an implied yes in that. And so, what ends up happening, one thing leads to another. And they end up, there's a blowjob while Shane is on the phone. He has to mute to come. And it's very cute because a lot of times people have consensual non-consent fantasies, but they imagine that the way they must be played out must be very involved or, kind of dark or tonally serious. And the way that this plays out between them is so much more like the play wrestling that infuses so much of their sex. It's like, playful and silly. And that can still encompass a fantasy like consensual non-consent, which people, often are like, what's wrong with me that I'm into this? And it's because it's taboo, and taboo calls your attention to something. And, the feeling of my boyfriend wants me so badly that I can't even have a phone call. Like, of course that's fun. And consensual non-consent is just a way to play that out.
Yes. And one of my favorite parts of the whole scene is what happens right after that, which is Shane gets off the phone and kind of tackles Ilya and is like, why was that so hot? I loved that. And then Ilya says something to the effect of, you're a bad boy. Like, you like being bad. And Shane goes, that's not what this is anymore. Like, maybe at first it was like that, but now this is more real. Yeah. And it kind of opens the door for them to be able to have the eventual conversation that they do, which is them saying that they love each other. But I just think that Shane being brave and saying, that's not what this is anymore. I think that. Like, it makes me feel like so much empathy for young people in love because, especially because we haven't really hit on this yet. I've been seeing, stuff around the fact that Shane is supposed to be an autistic person and someone with autism. And as we actually just released an episode recently about what sex could be like for people with autism. And also that's not something necessarily that I clocked when I first watched this series, but in seeing, how kind of demure and like, his tone, the way in which that Shane acts, it's so incredible. And the way that he is able to have a conversation that is emotional, I imagine that is very hard for his character. It could be as someone with autism. And so I just think the whole thing is so vulnerable, is so like connective. It's just like a beautiful way that they're ending the first season, is them having this conversation about them being in love.
And I have to say, in the kink community, neurodivergence and autism are very overrepresented. It's like when someone's not autistic, I'm more surprised than if they are. And, in my Discord community that goes along with my podcast, we've just got, everybody has, we're talking about neurodivergence all the time. And I have had such a lovely learning and educational experience being in community with neurodivergent people around these topics, because communication is so essential. You have to talk about stuff and externalize stuff. And I think we would all do a lot better to approach relationships, even among two neurotypical people. I wouldn't know what that's like, but if anyone was neurotypical out there, approach their relationship with the level of communication that's standard for neurodivergent connections. That's like much more active consent, more pleasure, more joy. It's all really good stuff. So seeing that, what is hard for Shane would be facilitated by more direct communication. It's like, why aren't we all just talking about more things?
Yes. I mean, that is definitely my MO. I feel like as a neurotypical person, but someone who really, really appreciates direct, clear communication, as a path to, as you said, pleasure, as a path to understanding, connection, especially when it comes to sex and the way in which that we use our bodies by ourselves and with other people. I think it's really, really important to be clear. Yeah. And this, it wouldn't be a sex education moment if I didn't talk about what the show maybe didn't realistically portray about anal sex in particular. So I would love to, for the next few minutes before we close, talk about, a few things that if people are watching who haven't had sex yet, or people who kind of assume that this is, typical. What are the things that they should know? And I just want to start out by just saying I consulted my friend who's a gay man and was like, I need to hear, from you, like what are your general thoughts on this? And something that I thought was really important that he told me that I wanted to pass along is the fact that it's very overrepresented how much penetrative anal sex is had on the first few dates when people are together. Typically, it is more likely that there's going to be a blowjob, a hand job, eating ass instead of anal penetration. And I thought that was super important because the show did not portray anal penetration, I believe, the first time that they had sex.
Yeah.
So I liked that they showed that realistically. But one thing that I didn't think was very realistic was the lack of lube.
Yeah.
The lack of fingers or toys that were kind of used to warm up the anus, as well as a discussion around any sort of mess that might happen. So saying, okay, if you're not going to douche or not going to clean out your anus, then there might be poop. So we need to be talking about that, / maybe put a towel down. So those are the things that came up for me that I felt like I wanted to say. I'm curious to get your take on what felt like there could be a more realistic portrayal if we wanted to even approach that. This is fantasy. So I want to make that clear as well.
Yeah. And I think they have earned the right to do their anal sex the way that they do it in the show. And I think it's very fun. But yeah, in terms of the rubber hitting the road in any of our lives, what you don't want to do is the famous moment from Brokeback Mountain is when I believe Heath Ledger is the top in that. It's been a while, but he spits in his hand and then penetrates Jake Gyllenhaal. And so no one is spitting in their hand and penetrating anyone anally. The thing with anal sex that, it's hard to portray on television, and part of why it doesn't happen in those earlier, interactions in real life, is that it takes a lot of preparation, it takes a lot of communication, and it takes time because, the anus it needs time to open up, to feel safe. And, there's a certain amount of wanting to know somebody, to know that they can, enter your body in that way. And so the anal sex is governed by a series of sphincters. There is the outer sphincter, which you can control a lot more with your conscious mind, but there's an inner sphincter a little deeper in that is more difficult to control with your conscious thinking brain. And so that is like very parasympathetic nervous system zone where we need to let the other person sort of establish trust with us before we're able to completely open up, both literally and metaphorically, to that kind of penetration. And then, warming up with toys, warming up with fingers, warming up with lube. It's something I wanted to flag, is that something that I've been hearing a lot lately that's very validating for me is that some people like toys and some people like fingers and some people don't like both. Some people might not like a finger but really enjoy a butt plug, and that can be a way to open up and be ready for penetration. But the other thing about anal penetration, too, is that it has to be agreed among all parties that it's nonlinear. Like, it might not feel good for the whole duration of, until the top orgasms, if they're penetrating with a penis, or, there might be, interludes where we take a break, and that's what hands and mouths are for, as long as we're washing before going from one orifice to another. But the thing that's impossible to capture on screen is the amount of time and patience that anal sex requires. So you can't, if you have a background in, penetrating a vagina, you can't treat an anus the same way. It's not, as ready to go.
Doesn't self-lubricate as much.
No, it doesn't self-lubricate in the same way. And it's a little more tender. And I think, there's a very deep analysis to be done on how, it's sort of this barrier of trust and where we are able to let somebody go inside of us. It's, it's something intense and beautiful. And there's a lot of payoff when done right, but it can't be rushed.
Yes. Such good tips. I think I saw Jacob Tierney, the person who adapted it, the director for screen, have this quote and say, fuck off, basically. Like, this is not supposed to be realistic. This is a TV show. Yeah. And I totally understand that. I think that there's room for the show to exist without being super, to a T what would happen in real life. And my wish, my dream as a sex educator is that there's a companion podcast like this one where they're like, and if you want to just learn some tips a little bit more, they're going to talk about the entire time how hot it was, but also infuse some sex education in it. Here's the link, right? Like that's
Canada,
my dream.
hire us.
Canada, if the country of Canada, Jacob Tierney, if you're listening, Hudson Williams, Connor Story, etc. If you're listening, know that we're your educators who are able to provide that edutainment.
Yes.
And I feel so strongly about this because millions and millions of people have watched this and have amazingly been turned on by it, have maybe questioned their sexuality in a good way or made them think that they're attracted to something that they didn't realize they were attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
So many great discoveries, and there's such an opportunity to make sure we're educating folks and having that conversation.
Yes. When you're turned on, it's an opportunity for self-exploration and growth. And that's where folks like you and I pick up.
Gorgeous. I love it. Lina Dune, thank you so much for chatting with me. This has been such a wonderful conversation. If you're listening and want to learn more about Sex Ed with DB, if this is your first episode by any chance, you can find us Sex Ed with DB on all platforms, Sex Ed with DB podcast on Instagram, and Sex Ed with DB on TikTok. Lina, you want to tell the people where you're at?
Yes, come find me at askasub.substack.com, patreon.com/askasub, and search Ask a Sub anywhere you get your podcasts. And I am Askasub 2.0 on Instagram.
Yes. Happy Heated Rivalry rewatch to all. And to all, a happy new year. Love y'all.